Emily Carter had spent 3 years perfecting the art of invisibility. Behind the polished reception desk of Morrison and Associates, she smiled at clients, answered phones, and organized schedules with meticulous precision. Nobody asked questions, nobody looked twice. That was exactly how she needed it. But on a gray Tuesday morning in October, when a stranger walked through those glass doors and his eyes locked onto the faded tattoo barely visible beneath her sleeve, Emily knew her carefully constructed life was about to shatter. Some secrets, no matter how deep you bury them, always find their way to the surface.
Quick pause. Before we continue, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? If you're enjoying these stories, make sure to hit subscribe, because tomorrow's episode is absolutely mind-blowing. The morning routine never changed. Emily arrived at Morrison & Associates at 7:30 sharp, 45 minutes before anyone else. She unlocked the glass doors of the reception area, disabled the security system with the code she had memorized on her first day, and settled behind the curved mahogany desk that served as both her workspace and her fortress. The law firm occupied the 23rd floor of a sleek building in Lower Manhattan. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city that never failed to remind Emily how far she had come from where she started. 3 years ago, she had walked through these same doors with a forged resume, a carefully rehearsed backstory, and a determination to become someone else entirely. She powered on her computer and reviewed the day's schedule. David Morrison, the managing partner, had back-to-back consultations starting at 9. 2 were regular clients, corporate types with tax issues and contract disputes. The third was new, Marcus Webb, scheduled for 10:30. The intake form provided minimal information. Business consultation, referred by an unnamed associate, paid the retainer in cash. Emily made a mental note of the cash payment. In her experience, people who paid lawyers in cash usually had something to hide. By 8:15, the office began to fill. Junior associates rushed past with coffee cups and leather briefcases. Paralegals exchanged gossip by the elevator. David emerged from his corner office exactly at 8:30, as he did every morning, nodded at Emily with his characteristic efficiency, and disappeared into the conference room. This was Emily's world now. Predictable, safe, boring. Everything her old life had not been. The first 2 clients arrived and departed without incident. Emily checked them in, offered coffee, made pleasant small talk about the weather. She had become exceptionally good at small talk, that peculiar skill of saying much while revealing nothing. At 10:28, Marcus Webb stepped off the elevator. Emily recognized danger the moment she saw him. It was not anything obvious. He wore an expensive suit, carried himself with the controlled posture of someone who spent time in boardrooms, but there was something in the way he moved. A particular awareness of his surroundings that Emily knew intimately because she had spent years cultivating that same awareness in herself. He approached the desk with measured steps. Emily activated her professional smile, the one she had practiced in the mirror until it looked genuine. "Good morning. You must be Mr. Webb. Mr. Morrison is expecting you." "Thank you." His voice was smooth, educated, carefully neutral. Emily slid the sign-in sheet across the desk. As Marcus leaned forward to write, she noticed his hands. No rings, no watch, but faint scars across his knuckles. The kind of scars you got from hitting things that hit back. "Can I offer you coffee or water while you wait?" "Coffee, black." Emily stood and moved to the refreshment station tucked in the corner of the reception area. Her movements were practiced, economical. She poured the coffee into one of the firm's branded mugs, added a napkin, and turned back toward the desk. That was when it happened. As she approached, her heel caught on the edge of the area rug. The coffee mug tilted dangerously, and Emily instinctively twisted her body to prevent the hot liquid from spilling on Marcus. The mug crashed to the floor, shattering into several pieces. Coffee spread across the hardwood like dark ink. "I'm so sorry," Emily said immediately, kneeling to gather the larger ceramic fragments. "Let me clean this up." Marcus stood, grabbed napkins from the desk, and crouched beside her. "It's fine. Let me help." "No, please. I've got it." But Marcus was already reaching for the same piece of ceramic she was reaching for, and their hands nearly collided. Emily pulled back quickly, but the motion caused her blazer sleeve to ride up several inches, exposing the inside of her left wrist. The tattoo was small, no larger than a quarter, and faded from years of laser removal treatments, but the outline was still visible if you knew what to look for. A serpent coiled around a dagger with 3 small stars above it. The serpent's mark. Marcus froze. His eyes locked on the tattoo, then lifted to Emily's face. For exactly 3 seconds, the professional mask slipped from both of them. Recognition flashed between them like electricity. Emily yanked her sleeve down and stood abruptly. "I'll get something to clean this properly." She walked to the supply closet with steady steps, even though her heart was hammering against her ribs. Behind the closed door, she pressed her palms against the cool metal shelves and forced herself to breathe slowly. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The technique her therapist had taught her for managing panic attacks. Marcus had seen it. He had recognized it, and worse, he knew what it meant because he had the same knowledge she did. The serpent's mark had been the signature of the Novak organization, a criminal enterprise that had operated throughout the East Coast from 2008 through 2017. They had specialized in money laundering, extortion, and providing financial services to people who couldn't access legitimate banking. The mark was given to core members only, people who knew the organization's deepest secrets. Emily received hers in 2014 when she was 24 years old and drowning in her dead father's gambling debts. She grabbed paper towels and floor cleaner, reconstructed her composure, and returned to the reception area. "Again, I apologize for the mess," Emily said. Her voice was steady. "Accidents happen." Marcus's tone was pleasant, but his eyes held a different conversation entirely. David's office door opened. "Mr. Webb, please come in." Marcus stood, smoothed his tie, and followed David without a backglance. The door closed behind them. Emily sat very still at her desk. Her hands wanted to shake, but she would not let them. She had spent 3 years building this life. 3 years proving she could be someone different. She had cooperated with federal investigators, testified in sealed court proceedings, and accepted witness protection in exchange for information that helped dismantle the Novak organization. The FBI had assured her that everyone who mattered was either in prison or dead. Dmitry Novak himself had been killed in a prison riot in 2019. The organization was finished, but Marcus Webb had recognized the mark, which meant he had been part of it too.
Emily pulled up Marcus's intake form on her computer and studied it with new eyes. Business consultation. No specifics provided. Cash payment. The address listed was a P.O. box. She opened a browser window and typed his name into a search engine. Nothing relevant appeared, just a few social media profiles that could belong to anyone, a couple of business registrations for generic LLCs, the kind of thin digital footprint that suggested intentional scrubbing. 45 minutes later, David's door opened. Marcus emerged alone. David's voice carried from inside. "Emily, can you schedule a follow-up with Mr. Webb for next Tuesday, same time?" "Of course." Marcus approached the desk. Emily met his gaze directly this time, letting him see that she was not afraid. Fear was weakness, and she had learned long ago not to show weakness to predators. "Next Tuesday at 10:30, she said, her fingers moving across the keyboard. "I'll send you a confirmation email." "That works." Marcus paused, then added quietly, "You know, I couldn't help but notice you have excellent instincts. The way you recovered from that spill earlier, very graceful under pressure." The message was clear. He had seen more than just the tattoo. He had seen how she moved, how she assessed threats, how she maintained control. 3 years of customer service will do that, Emily replied evenly. You learn to handle unexpected situations. I imagine you've handled quite a few unexpected situations in your time. His smile did not reach his eyes. Haven't we all, Mr. Webb? They held each other's gaze for a moment longer. Then Marcus nodded once, a gesture that felt like acknowledgement between old soldiers, and walked to the elevator. Emily waited until the elevator doors closed before allowing herself to exhale.
The rest of the day passed in a blur of phone calls, filing, and routine tasks. Emily performed each one with mechanical precision while her mind raced through scenarios. What did Marcus want? Was he here because of her, or was his appearance genuinely coincidental? Should she warn David? Should she contact her FBI handler? That last thought made her stomach turn. She had not spoken to Agent Richardson in 18 months. The official witness protection period had ended after 2 years. She was free to live her life as long as she stayed clean and kept her head down. Running to the FBI now would mean admitting that her past had caught up with her. It would mean investigations, questions, possibly losing this job. David Morrison ran a firm with an impeccable reputation. He would not tolerate having a former criminal on his staff, no matter how reformed she claimed to be. No. Emily had spent too long building this life to let it crumble at the first sign of trouble. She would handle this herself. Emily thinks she has a plan to handle Marcus quietly, but she has no idea that the real threat isn't coming from the direction she's watching.
Emily spent the weekend researching. She used her old skills, the ones she had promised herself she would never use again, to dig into Marcus Webb's background. She accessed databases through proxies, cross-referenced corporate filings, followed paper trails through shell companies. What she found was both reassuring and disturbing. Marcus Webb was real, but he had only existed since 2018. Before that, nothing. No credit history, no employment records, no digital footprint. It was the same kind of manufactured identity that Emily herself possessed. He had been in the life. He had gotten out, and now he was here. The question was why. Monday morning arrived with heavy rain that blurred the city into gray impressions. Emily arrived at the office early, as always, but this time she performed additional checks. She inspected the office for anything out of place, verified that the security system had not been tampered with, and reviewed the building's weekend access logs. Nothing unusual. David arrived at his usual time, working through his morning schedule with characteristic efficiency. Emily maintained her routine, answering phones and managing appointments, while keeping one part of her mind alert for any sign of Marcus. He did not appear until his scheduled appointment the following day. Tuesday morning was clear and cold. Emily wore a blazer with longer sleeves and kept her movements carefully controlled, ensuring no accidental exposure of her wrists or forearms. Marcus arrived exactly on time. He wore a different suit, equally expensive, and carried a leather portfolio. His demeanor was entirely professional as he approached the desk. "Good morning, Mr. Webb. Mr. Morrison is ready for you." "Thank you, Emily." The use of her first name felt deliberate, a small assertion of familiarity that crossed the line between client and receptionist. As Marcus passed the desk, he paused. "Actually, I wonder if you could help me with something." Emily's shoulders tensed imperceptibly. "Of course. What do you need?" "I'm looking for a good restaurant in the area for a business dinner next week. You must know the neighborhood well. Any recommendations?" It was a test. He was establishing a reason to interact with her beyond the standard professional exchange. Emily considered her options in the split second before responding. She could refuse, maintain strict boundaries, but that might come across as suspicious, might make him push harder. Better to give him what he wanted, control the interaction. Carbone is excellent if you want Italian. Il Cortile if you prefer something quieter. Both are within walking distance. Il Cortile, Marcus repeated. Is that the place on Mulberry Street? That's right. I appreciate it. Maybe you could join me sometime. Get your professional opinion on whether the recommendation holds up. There it was, the real test. Emily kept her expression polite but distant. I'm flattered, but I make it a policy not to socialize with clients. Professional boundaries and all that. Very sensible, Marcus smiled. I respect boundaries. They're important, especially when you are trying to build a new life. The emphasis on new life was unmistakable.
Emily held his gaze without flinching. David's door opened. "Mr. Webb, sorry to keep you waiting. Please come in." Marcus nodded at Emily and followed David inside. The door closed with a quiet click. Emily's hands were steady as she returned to her work, but her mind was racing. Marcus was making his intentions clear. He knew who I was, and he was circling, looking for an opening. But for what purpose? Blackmail? Recruitment? Something else entirely. She needed more information. During her lunch break, Emily left the building and walked 3 blocks to a coffee shop she had never visited before. She found a table in the back corner, pulled out her personal phone, not the one connected to any of her current accounts, and dialed a number she had memorized but hoped never to use. Agent Richardson answered on the 3rd ring. "This is Richardson?" "It's Emily Carter. I need to talk." There was a pause. "Emily, it's been a while. Is everything all right?" "I'm not sure. Someone from before has appeared. He recognized the mark." "Give me a name." "Marcus Webb. At least that's what he's calling himself now. He's coming to the law firm where I work, posing as a client. I don't know what he wants." I heard typing on Richardson's end. "Marcus Webb. Can you spell that?" Emily provided the spelling and the limited information she had gathered. More typing. Then a longer silence. "I'm not finding anything in our databases," Richardson said finally. "But that doesn't mean much. A lot of the Novak organization's associates operated under the radar. Lower-level people who never got charged. Is he threatening you?" "Not directly, but he's making it clear that he knows." "Has he asked for anything? Money? Information? Favors?" "No, not yet." "Then my advice is to maintain distance and document everything. If he makes a direct threat or demand, contact me immediately. But Emily, and I mean this carefully, don't do anything illegal. Don't fall back into old patterns. If this goes sideways and you've compromised yourself, I can't protect you." "I understand." "Do you? Because you sound like you're thinking about handling this yourself. That's not your job anymore. That's not your life anymore."
Emily ended the call without responding. Richardson meant well, but he did not understand. The FBI could not help her unless Marcus actually did something criminal. By then, it might be too late. Her reputation, her job, her entire rebuilt life could be destroyed by mere association. She had to find out what Marcus wanted before he made his move. Back at the office, Emily maintained her careful routine. Marcus's meeting lasted 90 minutes. When he emerged, he approached the desk again. "Emily, I have one more favor to ask." "What can I help you with?" "I left some documents in Mr. Morrison's office. He said I could pick them up on Thursday, but I'll actually be out of town. Would it be possible for me to collect them Wednesday instead? I know it's short notice." "Let me check with Mr. Morrison." Emily buzzed David's office. He confirmed that Wednesday would be fine. Emily relayed this to Marcus. "Perfect. I'll see you Wednesday morning then. 10 o'clock?" "I'll make a note." Marcus left, and Emily immediately went to David's office. She knocked on the open door frame. "Mr. Morrison, do you have a moment?" David looked up from his computer. "Of course, Emily, come in." She closed the door behind her, a deviation from routine that David noticed immediately. "Is something wrong?" Emily had rehearsed this conversation in her mind. She needed to plant seeds without revealing too much. "I wanted to mention something about Mr. Webb. It might be nothing, but I've developed good instincts about clients over the years." "Go on." "He paid in cash, his background information is minimal, and he's showing more interest in the office operations than most clients do, asking about the neighborhood, trying to establish personal rapport. It might just be his personality, but you're concerned." David leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "What's your professional opinion?"
I think we should be cautious. Maybe verify his references more thoroughly before taking on any additional work for him. That's reasonable. I'll have Rebecca run a more detailed background check. Anything else I should know? Emily hesitated. This was the moment. She could tell David everything. Her past, the tattoo, the recognition. Come clean before the situation spiraled further. But once she spoke those words, they could not be unspoken. David would never look at her the same way. The trust they had built would evaporate. "No," she said finally. "Just a feeling. I wanted to mention it." "I appreciate your diligence. It's one of the reasons you're so valuable here, Emily. You pay attention to details others miss." Emily returned to her desk with David's words echoing in her mind. Valuable, trusted, everything she had worked for, everything she stood to lose. Wednesday morning arrived too quickly. Emily came to work early again, but this time she prepared. She positioned her phone on the desk with the recording app activated but hidden. If Marcus had anything incriminating, she would have evidence. At 10 a.m., precisely, the elevator doors opened. But it was not Marcus who stepped out. It was a woman Emily had not seen in 7 years. She was older now, her dark hair cut shorter, but Emily recognized her immediately. Vera Kozlov, Dmitry Novak's second-in-command, the person who had personally given Emily her tattoo, burning the mark into her skin with a heated needle while 2 men held her down. The person who, according to every official report, was supposed to be serving a 20-year sentence in federal prison. Vera's eyes found Emily instantly. A smile spread across her face, cold and predatory. "Hello, little bookkeeper. We need to talk about what you stole from us." Emily thought Marcus was the threat. She was wrong. And now she's trapped in the office with the one person who has every reason to want her dead.
Telling and preparing this story took us a lot of time. So if you're enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Emily's training kicked in before conscious thought could interfere. She pressed the silent alarm button hidden beneath her desk, an emergency feature that alerted building security and local police to an active threat. But Vera saw the movement. Already calling for help? Smart girl. Too bad it won't matter. "What do you want, Vera?" "I told you. We need to talk about what you stole." Vera moved closer to the desk with deliberate slowness. She was not carrying any visible weapons, but Emily knew Vera did not need weapons to be dangerous. "I didn't steal anything. I gave testimony about illegal activities I witnessed. That's not theft." "You gave the FBI access to accounts they never would have found. Accounts containing money that belonged to us. $87 million, Emily. That's what you cost the organization." "The organization is dead. Dmitry is dead. Everyone is either in prison or scattered. There's nothing left to take." "Is that what your FBI friends told you?" Vera laughed, a sharp sound without humor. "The organization adapted. We evolved. And now it's time to collect what we're owed." Emily kept her hands visible on the desk, her body language non-threatening despite the adrenaline flooding her system. "How did you get out? You were sentenced to 20 years. 16 months ago. There was a very unfortunate incident during a prison transfer. Several inmates escaped in the chaos. I was presumed dead. Convenient, yes?" "And Marcus?" "Marcus? Oh, you mean your little friend who's been visiting this office. That's not Marcus, darling. That's Alexei, Dmitry's nephew." The revelation hit Emily like cold water. Marcus was family, real family, not just organization loyalty. We've been watching you for 8 months, ever since we confirmed you were still alive. Alexei made contact to verify your identity. You confirmed it so perfectly when you exposed that pretty little tattoo. Emily's mind raced through the implications. 8 months of surveillance. They knew where she lived, where she worked, possibly where she shopped and ate and spent her free time. They had been building a complete picture of her life. The police will be here in minutes. Building security is already on their way. Yes, about that. Vera pulled out her phone and held it up. On the screen was a video feed showing the building's security office. 2 guards sat at their stations, completely still. They're just taking a little nap. And the police, well, let's say their response time today might be slower than usual. Traffic accidents are so unpredictable. Emily's heart sank. This was not a spontaneous confrontation. It was a carefully planned operation. What do you want from me? I don't have access to any money. I don't have information you could use. I'm nobody. That's where you're wrong. Vera moved around the desk now, invading Emily's space with predatory confidence. She was not carrying any visible weapons, but Emily knew Vera did not need weapons to be dangerous. You're the only person left alive who knows the final access codes to Dimitri's primary offshore accounts, the ones he kept separate from everything else, his insurance policy. I don't know any codes. Yes, you do. You just don't remember them yet. Vera pulled a small leather case from her jacket pocket and set it on the desk. Emmeline's blood turned to ice as she recognized what was in the case. Pharmaceutical memory aids, drugs designed to break down mental barriers, to force buried information to the surface, the same drugs interrogators used, the kind that left people broken and traumatized. I can't give you something I don't have. Even if I wanted to cooperate, I don't have those codes. Dimitri never shared them with me. He did. February 17th, 2015. His office in Atlantic City. You were working late on the quarterly books. He called you in, had you memorize a sequence while he watched, told you to forget it immediately after, and you did, like the good little soldier you were. The date stirred something in Emily's memory, a vague recollection of exhaustion, numbers swimming before her eyes, Dimitri's voice commanding her to repeat sequences until they were automatic. But the actual codes? Nothing. The memory was gone, deliberately suppressed by the trauma of everything that had followed. That was 10 years ago. Even if it happened the way you say, those memories are gone. Your drugs won't help. We'll see. The elevator chimed. Emily's hope spiked. Maybe building security had recovered faster than Vera expected. Maybe the police had arrived. But her hope died when Alexei, the man she had known as Marcus Webb, stepped into the reception area. He was no longer wearing the expensive suit. Instead, he was dressed in dark tactical clothing, and he carried a bag that clinked with the sound of metal tools. Any problems? Vera asked him in Russian. None. The floor is clear. Office employees are secured in the conference room. No one will interrupt us, he replied in the same language. Emily's Russian was rusty, but good enough to understand. They had taken control of the entire office. Where's David? Mr. Morrison is safe in his office. As long as you cooperate, everyone stays safe. This doesn't have to get messy. Messier than drugging people and taking an office hostage? Much messier, Vera said softly. You remember how messy things could get in the old days. I haven't lost my touch. Emily's mind calculated frantically. The police alarm had been triggered, which meant law enforcement would eventually respond, even if Vera had delayed them. She needed to buy time, keep them talking, look for opportunities.
Even if I could remember these codes, the accounts would be frozen by now. The FBI has been monitoring Dimitri's finances for years. The FBI monitors what they know about. These accounts were Dimitri's final backup, created before digital record-keeping became so thorough, coded under numbered shell corporations, hidden behind legitimate businesses. The FBI never found them because they didn't know to look. You made sure of that, didn't you? You are very selective about which information you provided. Emily's stomach twisted. It was true. During her cooperation agreement, she had held back certain details, not to protect the organization, but to protect herself. She had reasoned that keeping some secrets gave her leverage, insurance against the organization coming after her later. That decision was now coming back to destroy her. I want you to understand something, Emily. I don't enjoy this. You were always smart, always careful. Under certain circumstances, I might have liked you. But you made choices, and choices have consequences. You took something from us. Now we're taking something back. Alexei began unpacking his bag. Medical supplies, restraints, a laptop computer, everything needed for an extended interrogation.
Emily's options were narrowing by the second. She could not physically fight both of them. She could not run. They controlled the exits. Her only weapon was information and time. "Wait," Emily said. "Before you do this, you need to know something. The codes won't work alone." Vera paused. "Explain." "Dimitri's accounts required dual authentication. The codes were only one part. The other part was a biometric scan, specifically his thumbprint. Without both components, the accounts stay locked." It was a complete lie, but it was a plausible lie. Modern offshore banking did use biometric security for high-value accounts. Vera studied Emily's face for a long moment. "You're lying." "Am I? Think about it. Dimitri was paranoid. He never trusted just one security layer. Remember the safe in his office? Combination plus retinal scan. The storage facility in Newark. Key card plus voice recognition. He always used redundant systems." Uncertainty flickered across Vera's expression. Emily pressed her advantage. "You can drug me all you want, but if the codes don't work without the biometric component, you'll have wasted your time. And if you try to access the accounts with just the codes, you'll trigger security protocols that will lock everything permanently." Alexei spoke up in Russian. "She could be telling the truth. Uncle Dmitri was careful about these things." Vera's jaw tightened. She was calculating, weighing the risks. Emily had bought herself a few minutes, maybe more. Then, David's office door opened. David Morrison stepped out, his usually immaculate appearance slightly disheveled, his tie loosened, but his expression was calm, almost serene. "I think," David said quietly, "that we've wasted enough time with this charade. Don't you agree, Vera?" Emily's world tilted sideways. Vera smiled. "Finally, I was wondering how long you'd make us wait." David walked to the reception desk and stood beside Vera, their body language shifting from adversarial to collegial in an instant. Emily stared at her boss, her mind refusing to process what she was seeing. "David?" "I'm sorry, Emily. I truly am. You've been an excellent employee, but business is business." David reached into his pocket and pulled out a small remote device. He pressed a button, and Emily heard the click of locks engaging throughout the office. There. Now we have complete privacy. No more interruptions. The betrayal hit Emily like a physical blow. David Morrison, the man she had worked for loyally for 3 years, was part of this, had always been part of this. You're with the organization?" "Not with. I am the organization. Or rather, I rebuilt it after Dimitri's unfortunate demise. Dimitri was brilliant, but he lacked vision for growth. I saw opportunities he never imagined."
Emily's mind raced backward 3 years of employment. Every case she had worked on, every client she had checked in, every document she had filed, she had been processing the organization's business the entire time, right under the FBI's nose. The law firm is a front? The law firm is quite legitimate. We handle real legal work for real clients. That's what makes it so perfect, hidden in plain sight. But yes, it also serves other purposes. Money laundering has become so much easier with proper legal infrastructure. Alexei spoke up. Can we skip the villain monologue and get to the part where she gives us the codes? David smiled indulgently. Alexei is pragmatic. He doesn't appreciate the psychological elegance of the situation. But he's right. We're on a schedule. Emily, the codes, please. I told you, they won't work without the biometric. There is no biometric component. That was a good attempt at misdirection, but I know Dimitri's systems intimately. He consulted me when he set up those accounts. The codes are sufficient. Emily's bluff had failed. She had nothing left except the truth. I don't remember them. I really don't. David sighed. That's unfortunate. Vera, proceed with... The explosion of shattering glass cut off his words. The cavalry arrives, but they're not who Emily expects, and their rescue comes with a price that might be worse than what she's escaping from.
3 figures repelled through the shattered windows, moving with military precision. They wore tactical gear and carried weapons, but no police badges or identification. The lead figure fired twice, suppressed shots to hit Alexei in the shoulder and leg before he could draw his own weapon. Vera moved like liquid, diving behind the reception desk and pulling Emily down with her. Don't move, she hissed. David had frozen, hands raised, his calculated composure finally cracking. The lead figure removed their helmet, revealing a woman in her 40s with sharp features and ice-gray eyes. She leveled her weapon at David. Mr. Morrison, please keep your hands visible. Agent Richardson? Emily gasped. Not quite, the woman replied. She turned her attention to Emily. Emily Carter, or should I say, Rachel Volkov. You've been very difficult to find. Rachel, her birth name, the name she had not used in over a decade, since before she had become Emily Carter or any of the other identities she had cycled through. I don't understand, Emily said. Who are you? My name is Katya Novak. I'm Dimitri's daughter. The words seemed to suck the oxygen from the room. Dimitri Novak had never mentioned having children. He had been pathologically private about his personal life. But the resemblance was there, in the sharp angles of her face, the cold calculation in her eyes. That's impossible, Vera said, still crouched beside Emily. Dimitri had no children. Dimitri had many secrets, Katya replied. I was one of them. Raised in Moscow by my mother, kept separate from the business, until the FBI arrested him and he reached out to me for help. By the time I arrived in America, he was already dead, murdered in prison by someone who wanted to ensure his empire stayed buried. She looked directly at David as she spoke those last words. David's expression remained carefully neutral, but Emily saw the slight tension in his shoulders, fear barely controlled. I've spent 6 years, Katya continued, rebuilding my father's network, tracking down the people responsible for his death, and searching for the one thing he left behind, access to his final accounts. The accounts that contained not just money, but documentation, evidence of everyone who betrayed him, including you, Mr. Morrison. I never betrayed Dimitri. I was his legal counsel. Everything I did was to protect the organization's interests. You were his legal counsel who happened to meet with FBI agent Richardson 3 days before the raid that captured my father. You were his legal counsel who coincidentally restructured his accounts in ways that made them easier for federal investigators to trace. You were his legal counsel who walked away from the collapse of his empire with your reputation intact and a convenient law firm to build on the ashes. David said nothing. His silence was confirmation enough. Katya's team had secured Alexei, who was bleeding but alive. Another figure entered through the broken window. Agent Richardson himself, looking considerably less official than the last time Emily had seen him. "Agent Richardson," Emily said slowly, "you're working with her?" "Former Agent Richardson," he corrected. "I retired from the Bureau 18 months ago. Consulting is much more lucrative." The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture more complex than Emily had imagined. Richardson had not been protecting her out of duty. He had been keeping track of her for Katya, making sure she remained accessible when needed. "The phone call I made to you yesterday, you told Katya where I was." "I told her you had been contacted by someone you believed was from the old organization. She already knew where you worked. We've been monitoring David's operation for months, but your call confirmed the timeline was accelerating." Vera still had her arm around Emily's shoulders, keeping her pinned behind the desk. Emily could feel the older woman's rapid breathing, sense her mind working through possibilities. "So what happens now?" Emily asked Katya. "You've got David, you've got Vera and Alexei. What do you need me for?" "The codes, naturally. My father trusted you with them for a reason. You were loyal to him, even when everyone else was making deals and saving themselves." "I testified against him." "Only after he was already captured, and you held back information, the most important information. That tells me something about your character, Rachel. You're a survivor. You play the angles. I respect that." Emily's mind was racing. She was trapped between multiple hostile forces, each wanting something from her. Katya wanted the codes, David and Vera wanted the codes, but the codes themselves were the only leverage Emily had left. "If I give you the codes, what guarantee that you'll let me walk away?" Katya smiled. It was not a warm expression. "None. But if you don't give me the codes, I'll let Vera have you. She's been very patient, waiting for her turn. I think she has some creative ideas about how to refresh your memory." Vera's grip tightened on Emily's arm. "Give her what she wants, little bookkeeper. At least Katya kills quickly." The choice was an illusion, Emily understood. But trapped between certain torture and possible death, she would choose the possibility every time. "I need something to write with," Emily said quietly. Katya nodded to one of her team members who tossed a small notebook and pen across the room. Emily caught them, her hands steadier than they had any right to be. She opened the notebook and stared at the blank page. The codes were supposed to be buried deep in her memory, locked away by trauma and time. But as she sat there with the pen poised, something strange happened. The codes came. Not all at once, but in fragments. Pieces of a sequence she had memorized 10 years ago while exhausted and afraid, burned into her neural pathways through repetition and stress. The human brain was remarkable that way. It remembered what it needed to remember even when consciousness tried to forget. Emily wrote slowly, letting each number settle into certainty before adding the next. 12 digits, then a pause. 8 more digits, another pause. A final sequence of 6. She looked at what she had written. 26 numbers in 3 groups. It felt right. It felt complete. But giving these numbers to Katya meant surrendering her only bargaining chip. Once Katya had what she wanted, Emily became a liability, someone who knew too much, who could identify too many people. Emily made a decision. She tore the page from the notebook, folded it once, and held it up. "I'll give you these codes on one condition. You let everyone in this office go free. The employees you locked in the conference room, David, Vera, Alexei, everyone walks away." "That's not how this works," Katya said coldly. "Then you don't get the codes." Emily's hand moved toward her mouth. "I can swallow this paper faster than you can cross the room, and good luck recovering legible numbers from my stomach acid."
It was a desperate bluff, but desperation was all Emily had left. Katya studied her for a long moment, calculating odds and outcomes. "You would trade your only leverage to save people who are planning to torture and kill you?" "I'm trading it to save the innocent employees who have nothing to do with any of this. The others can live with their choices, but I won't be responsible for collateral damage." Something flickered in Katya's expression. Surprise, maybe, or a reluctant respect. "You are more like my father than I expected. He had a code too, twisted as it was." "Fine. The employees go free, but David, Vera, and Alexei stay with me. They have debts to pay." "And me?" "You walk. You disappear. You never surface again. And if you ever speak about what happened here to anyone, I will find you. I'm very good at finding people." Emily believed her. She stood slowly, Vera releasing her arm with obvious reluctance. Emily crossed the room and handed the folded paper to Katya. Katya unfolded it and studied the numbers. She pulled out her phone and typed them into some kind of application. Seconds passed. Then a notification chimed. "Access confirmed," Katya said softly. "The accounts are open." She nodded to her team. "Release the conference room. Emily, you have 60 seconds to get to the elevator before I change my mind about our agreement." Emily did not need to be told twice. She grabbed her personal bag from beneath the reception desk and ran for the elevator. As she passed David, their eyes met. His expression was empty, resigned. The man who had built an empire on the ashes of another was about to lose everything. Emily felt no sympathy for him. The elevator doors opened. Emily stepped inside and jabbed a button for the lobby. As the doors began to close, she heard David speak one last time. "Emily, for what it's worth, you really were an excellent employee." The doors closed on whatever else he might have said. The elevator descended with agonizing slowness. Emily's hands were shaking now, adrenaline finally catching up with her. 23 floors, 22, 21. What would she find when the doors opened? Police? Katya's people waiting to tie up loose ends, despite the agreement? Or just a normal Tuesday afternoon in Lower Manhattan, oblivious to the violence that had occurred on the 23rd floor? The elevator reached the lobby. The doors opened. Outside, rain had started to fall. People moved through the lobby with umbrellas and briefcases, absorbed in their own worlds. Security guards sat at their stations, unaware that their colleagues upstairs had been drugged. Everything was normal. Emily walked through the lobby with measured steps, forcing herself not to run. Out through the glass doors, into the rain, down the street. She walked for 6 blocks before she allowed herself to stop. She ducked into a coffee shop, ordered something she did not want, and sat in the back corner where she could watch the door. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You kept your word. I keep mine. But don't mistake mercy for friendship. Disappear, Rachel." Emily deleted the message and powered off her phone. She sat in the coffee shop for 3 hours, watching the rain and thinking about what came next. She had no job, no references, no identity that was safe to use. Emily Carter was burned. Anyone looking for her would start with that name. She would need to become someone else again, build a new life from scratch for the 3rd time. But this time she would do it differently. No more hiding in plain sight. No more working for people without knowing who they really were. No more secrets that could be used against her. This time she would disappear completely. Emily thinks she's finally free, but the codes she gave to Katya contained one final secret, a failsafe that's about to change everything.
3 months later, Emily was working as a night clerk at a small motel outside Santa Fe, New Mexico. She had dyed her hair auburn, worn contact lenses that changed her eye color, and adopted the name Sarah Mitchell. The work was simple, the pay was enough to survive on, and nobody asked questions. She had followed Katya's instruction to disappear. No social media, no credit cards, no digital footprint. Cash only, fake ID purchased from a man in Albuquerque who specialized in helping people start over. This time, Emily had no illusions about building a permanent life.
She knew now that permanence was a fantasy for people like her. The motel was quiet most nights. Truckers stopping for rest, families on road trips, the occasional businessman too tired to drive further. Emily checked them in, handed out keys, and counted the hours until dawn. She tried not to think about what had happened at Morrison & Associates. Local news had reported a hostage situation that had been peacefully resolved with no casualties. David Morrison had taken a sudden leave of absence for health reasons. The firm had released a statement about restructuring and commitment to client service. No mention of Katya or her team. No mention of offshore accounts or organized crime. The whole incident had been sanitized, packaged into a narrative that would not raise uncomfortable questions. Emily wondered what had happened to Vera and Alexei, whether they had survived their debts to Katya, whether David was still alive, or if he had paid the ultimate price for his betrayal. She tried not to care. That was her old life, her old problems. Sarah Mitchell had no connection to any of it. But on Wednesday night in January, when the temperature had dropped below freezing and the motel was empty except for one room occupied by an elderly couple, the door to the office opened, and Agent Richardson walked in. Emily's hand moved instinctively toward the panic button beneath the desk. "Don't," Richardson said quietly. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to talk. We have nothing to talk about. You sold me out to Katya." "I protected you from Katya. There's a difference." Richardson approached the desk slowly, hands visible and empty. "May I sit?" Emily did not respond, but Richardson took the chair crossing the desk anyway. He looked older than she remembered, more worn. The retirement from the FBI had not been kind to him. "How did you find me?" Emily asked. "Facial recognition at a gas station in Amarillo. You were careful, but not careful enough. Technology has gotten very good at finding people who don't want to be found." Emily's stomach sank. If Richardson had found her, others could too. "What do you want?" "To tell you the truth. The whole truth, this time, not the edited version." Richardson leaned back in the chair. "Katya Novak is not Dmitri's daughter. She's FBI." The words seemed to come from very far away. Emily stared at Richardson, certain she had misheard. "That's impossible. She had equipment, a team, resources. All bureau assets. Special task force, off the books. Katya's real name is Catherine Novak, but she's not related to Dmitri. She's the agent who spent 5 years undercover in the organization before it fell apart. She knows more about the Novak operation than anyone alive." Emily's mind struggled to process this revelation. Everything that happened at the law firm suddenly looked different through this lens. If she's FBI, why didn't she just arrest everyone? Why the elaborate performance? Because David Morrison was not just running a criminal enterprise. He was a federal informant, had been for 8 years. The room seemed to tilt. David was working for the FBI? Working with us, anyway. We gave him immunity in exchange for information about organized crime activities in the New York area. He provided intelligence that led to dozens of arrests. But he was playing both sides, feeding us enough to keep us happy while building his own operation. We knew he was dirty, but we couldn't prove it. The offshore accounts you provided codes for, they contained evidence of Morrison's real activities. Laundering money for terrorist organizations, weapons trafficking, human smuggling, things much worse than anything Dmitri Novak ever did. Emily felt nauseous. She had worked for David for 3 years, processed documents, organized files, smiled at clients. How many of those clients had been involved in the atrocities Richardson was describing? And Vera? Alexei? Vera really did escape from prison, but we had been tracking her for months. She led to Alexei, who led to David. The whole operation was designed to take down the network in one coordinated action. You just happened to be the key that unlocked everything. The codes I gave to Katya gave us access to Morrison's entire operation. Financial records, client lists, communication logs. We've made 43 arrests in the past 3 months. Shut down trafficking routes across 3 continents, seized over $200 million in illegal assets. You helped us do that, Emily, whether you intended to or not. Emily sat very still, absorbing this information. Her whole understanding of what had happened was being rewritten in real time. So it was all theater. The hostage situation, the threats, the deal with Katya, all of it was designed to get those codes from me. We needed you to believe the threat was real. If you had known Katya was FBI, you would have reacted differently. Your fear made the performance authentic. My fear, Emily repeated flatly. You used my trauma, my past, my desperate need to survive, and manipulated all of it to get what you wanted. Yes, Richardson did not try to soften it. What we did was morally gray at best, but the results speak for themselves. Dozens of traffickers are in prison, hundreds of victims have been recovered, and a corrupt federal informant who thought he was untouchable has been exposed.
Emily wanted to be angry. She wanted to feel righteously furious about being used as a pawn in a federal operation. But mostly she just felt exhausted. Why are you telling me this now? Because you deserve to know the truth, and because I want to offer you something. Richardson pulled an envelope from his jacket and placed it on the desk. In there is a new identity, real one this time, created by the federal government, completely clean. New social security number, background that will hold up to serious scrutiny, everything you need to actually start over. Emily stared at the envelope without touching it. What's the cost? No cost. This is not a deal. You've already paid enough. Richardson stood. David Morrison died 2 weeks ago. Heart attack while in federal custody, at least officially. Vera and Alexia are both serving life sentences. The Novak organization, in all its iterations, is finished. You're free, Emily. Really free. No one is looking for you anymore. Except you found me in 3 months. I found you because I needed to tell you this. No one else is looking. The facial recognition hit was flagged only to me, and I've already deleted it from the system. As far as anyone knows, Emily Carter disappeared and was never seen again. Richardson walked to the door, then paused. One more thing. The 26 numbers you gave to Katya, they were correct, but they also triggered a failsafe. Emily's breath caught. What failsafe? Dmitri programmed those accounts with a dead man's switch. If anyone accessed them without entering a secondary authorization code within 72 hours, the accounts would automatically transfer all funds to a designated recipient. Richardson smiled slightly. Guess who the designated recipient was? Emily's mind went blank. Rachel Volkov, your birth name. Dmitri set it up a month before his arrest. $143 million, currently sitting in an account under your original identity, held in trust by a Swiss banking firm, completely legal, completely untouchable by any law enforcement agency. The words did not make sense. Emily tried to process them and failed. Why would Dmitri do that? I have a theory. I think he knew the end was coming. I think he knew people would betray him. And I think he decided that the one person who had been loyal to him, even when terrified and coerced, deserved something better than a life on the run. Richardson opened the door. Cold air rushed into the small office. One more thing. The 26 numbers you gave to Katya, they were correct, but they also triggered a failsafe. Emily's breath caught. What failsafe? Dmitri programmed those accounts with a dead man's switch. If anyone accessed them without entering a secondary authorization code within 72 hours, the accounts would automatically transfer all funds to a designated recipient. Richardson smiled slightly. Guess who the designated recipient was? Emily's mind went blank. Rachel Volkov, your birth name. Dmitri set it up a month before his arrest. $143 million, currently sitting in an account under your original identity, held in trust by a Swiss banking firm. Completely legal, completely untouchable by any law enforcement agency. The words did not make sense. Emily tried to process them and failed. Why would Dmitri do that? I have a theory. I think he knew the end was coming. I think he knew people would betray him. And I think he decided that the one person who had been loyal to him, even when terrified and coerced, deserved something better than a life on the run. Richardson opened the door. Cold air rushed into the small office. One more thing. The account information is in the envelope, along with your new identity. What you do with it is your choice. But Emily, Sarah,
Rachel, whoever you decide to be, you've earned the right to live without fear. Don't waste it." He left, closing the door gently behind him. Emily sat alone in the motel office in New Mexico, staring at the envelope on the desk. Outside, snow had begun to fall, covering the parking lot in white silence. She thought about Dmitry Novak, the man she had feared and served and ultimately betrayed. A monster by any reasonable measure, responsible for countless crimes and suffering, but also apparently someone who had recognized something in her worth protecting. She thought about David Morrison, who had smiled at her every morning while building an empire of horrors. About Vera and Alexei, trapped in their own cycles of violence and loyalty. About Katya, Catherine, whoever she really was, an FBI agent who had lived a lie for years to bring down an organization. Everyone in this story had worn masks. Everyone had secrets. The line between hero and villain was not as clear as Emily had once believed. She picked up the envelope and opened it. Inside was a passport in the name of Claire Anderson, complete with photo, stamps from international travel, all the small details that made an identity real. Social security card, birth certificate, bank account information for an account in Switzerland requiring only her physical presence and a DNA sample to access. $143 million. Emily could go anywhere, become anyone. She could fund charities, help people, use the money to make amends for her years in the organization. Or she could disappear into luxury, never work another day, live out her life in comfort. But as she looked at the documents, Emily realized that she did not want either of those options. She wanted something simpler. She wanted to be a person who did not have to hide, who did not have to calculate every interaction for threats and opportunities, who could form connections without fear of betrayal. She wanted to be ordinary. The money could make that possible, not by buying escape, but by buying freedom from desperation. She would never again be forced into choices by poverty or debt. She would never again be vulnerable to predators who exploited people with nowhere else to turn. Claire, made a decision. She would access the account. She would take enough money to live comfortably but not extravagantly. The rest would go to organizations that help people escape trafficking, that provide resources to women in desperate circumstances, that gave people the second chances she had been given. She would find a small town somewhere with good schools and community centers. She would volunteer at a library or a women's shelter. She would build relationships slowly and carefully, letting people know her without knowing everything about her. She would live. Not in hiding, but in quiet authenticity. Not as Emily Carter, the receptionist with a buried past. Not as Rachel Volkov, the frightened bookkeeper who had survived the Novak organization. Not as Sarah Mitchell, the temporary identity meant only to last until the next threat appeared. As Claire Anderson, a woman with resources, a willingness to help others, and a deep understanding of how quickly lives could spiral into darkness. It would not erase what she had done. It would not absolve her of the years she had spent processing money for criminals, even if she had been coerced. But it would be something. A way forward that was not just survival, but actual living. The snow continued to fall outside. Claire Anderson sat in a motel office in New Mexico and thought about what tomorrow might bring. For the first time in 10 years, she felt something that resembled hope.
2 years later, a woman named Claire Anderson was known in a small Colorado town as the quiet lady who had bought the old Henderson house on Maple Street. She worked part-time at the community library, volunteered with the local women's shelter, and was slowly becoming part of the town's social fabric. People knew she had money. The renovations on the Henderson house had been extensive, but she was not flashy about it. She drove a modest car, dressed simply, and seemed more interested in helping others than in displaying wealth. The librarian, Martha, had become something like a friend. They had coffee every Thursday morning at the diner on Main Street. Martha talked about her grandchildren, her book club, the small dramas of small-town life. Claire listened more than she talked, but she laughed at Martha's stories and occasionally shared carefully edited anecdotes from her own past. "You know what I like about you?" Martha said one Thursday morning, pouring cream into her coffee. "You're present. So many people these days, they're always looking at their phones, always somewhere else in their heads. But when you're with someone, you're really with them." Claire smiled. "I've learned to appreciate the moment. You never know how quickly things can change." "That's the truth. My late husband used to say that. 'Martha,' he'd say, 'don't spend so much time planning tomorrow that you forget to live today.'" Martha paused. "Do you have family, Claire? You never mention anyone." It was the question Claire had been expecting for months. She had prepared her answer carefully. "Not really. I was an only child, and my parents passed away a long time ago. But I'm okay with that. Sometimes the family you choose is just as important as the family you're born into." Martha reached across the table and patted Claire's hand. "Well, you've got family here now, whether you planned on it or not. This town adopts people. You're one of ours now." Claire felt an unexpected warmth in her chest. It was not the same as the hollow performance of emotion she had practiced for years. This was something real, something that grew from genuine connection. "Thank you, Martha. That means a lot." Later that afternoon, while shelving books in the library, Claire's phone buzzed with an email notification. She did not recognize the sender, just a string of numbers and letters that looked like a randomly generated address. The email contained no text, just an image file. Claire's heart rate picked up as she opened the attachment. It was a photograph of a gravestone in what looked like a Russian cemetery. The name on the stone was in Cyrillic, but Claire read it easily. Dmitry Volkov Novak, 1962-2019. Below the dates was a short inscription, also in Russian, "For those who remember with honor." Someone had placed fresh flowers on the grave. Someone was maintaining it, caring for it, keeping Dmitry's memory alive despite everything he had done. The email address suggested the sender was covering their tracks, but Claire knew who had sent it. Catherine, the FBI agent who had orchestrated everything, who had given Claire a chance to become someone new. The photograph was a message. The past is never truly dead, but you can live with it instead of being consumed by it. Claire deleted the email and the image file. Then she deleted them from her trash folder as well. Some messages did not need to be preserved. She finished shelving the books and helped Martha lock up the library at closing time. They walked together down Main Street, making plans for the book club meeting next week. Martha wanted to read a mystery. Claire suggested a memoir instead, something about ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances. "That sounds perfect," Martha said. "You always pick the good ones." They parted at the corner, Martha heading to her house on Oak Street, Claire walking toward Maple. The autumn air was crisp and clear, carrying the smell of wood smoke from someone's fireplace. Lights glowed in windows. Children's voices carried from backyards where families were finishing dinner. Normal life. Ordinary life. The kind of life Claire had once thought was impossible for someone like her. As she walked up the path to her house, Claire thought about the girl she had been at 24. Desperate, afraid, trapped by circumstances she had not chosen. She had thought about the woman she had been at 32, hiding behind a reception desk, pretending to be someone she was not, living in constant fear of exposure. And she thought about the woman she was now, at 35, still carrying scars, still aware that the past could resurface at any moment, but no longer letting fear dictate her choices. She unlocked her door and stepped inside. The house smelled like the lavender sachets she kept in the closets, like the cinnamon candles she burned in the evening. Home smells, safe smells. Claire made tea and settled into her favorite chair with a book. Outside, the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. Tomorrow she would volunteer at the shelter. Next week she would attend Martha's book club. Next month she would finally visit the art class at the community center that she had been meaning to try. She had been given something precious and rare, a genuine second chance. Not because she had earned it through perfect behavior, not because she had somehow atoned for her past.
simply because one person had decided she deserved the opportunity to be more than her worst moments. Claire Anderson would not waste that gift. She opened her book and began to read, letting the story carry her away from thoughts of violence and fear and desperate survival, letting herself be present in this moment, in this life, in this version of herself that felt more authentic than any identity she had worn before. The past would always be part of her. The tattoo beneath her sleeve would never fully fade. The memories would never completely disappear. But they did not define her anymore. She was not Emily Carter, the perfect receptionist with secrets. She was not Rachel Volkov, the frightened bookkeeper who survived by any means necessary. She was Claire Anderson, a woman who made mistakes and had been given a chance to make better choices. A woman who had seen the darkness in humanity and chosen to respond with whatever light she could manage. That was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything.
Up next, 2 more incredible stories are waiting for you right on your screen. If you enjoyed this one, you won't want to miss these. Just click to watch and don't forget to subscribe.